to external man worship. We're back to religious worship. Now, we have to focus when working spiritual magic and creating your own path. Each one of those deities represents a certain archetype energy. You have to also take that into conjunction with the planetary movements, the waxing and waning of the moon, the astrological signs, because you're going to find most of these deities were birthed through certain astrological signs because of what they represent. As I said before, for an example, the deity Ra, who's synonymous with the sign of Taurus the bull. When we're in the astrological sign of Taurus, that's a great time to access Ra for decalcifying the pineal gland, for an example. If you want to work on accessing that particular chakra to get it functioning and flowing and opening. But I always tell people, I only recommend that if you're grounded in your root chakra, your sacral chakra, and your throat chakra. Because that's like an engine. If those three ain't working, see, a lot of people want to sit there and go, my third eye is open, and it's not. You think it is because you've convinced yourself, but how you know it is or isn't, look and see it if you're balanced on spiritual, mental, emotional levels. If there's that imbalancement there, you're not grounded in the root chakra. And people bypass the root chakra as if it's not important. And it's very important because it's the base, it's the foundation. You understand? You have to be grounded in that root chakra. And to do spiritual work on all the chakras, just get yourself educated on the different crystals, elements, fragrances, scents, aromatherapy, meditation, colors, because that's all therapeutic to stimulating these chakras. And it's very powerful. You can do it through candle magic, especially if you know the colors. Very, very powerful to get those chakras vibrating in unison. If they're not, first of all, if the root chakra is not functioning correctly, your third eye or your brow chakra is not open. I don't care. You might think it is. You might have experiences here and there. Trust me, it's not. Because real simple, you'd be able to bring down the kundalini and pass it through the chakras at will. Wouldn't even need no practice doing it. And kundalini is not always a pleasant experience, contrary to what people tell you. People think accessing the kundalini is always this great spirit. It can be very painful. Because when you're accessing it, depending on what type of work you're doing, it can be very painful. And especially if you're working tantra or sex magic. That deals with a whole nother science. That always isn't pleasant, especially for the male. Not so much for the female, more so for the male. We talked a little bit about rituals that we'll probably get into a little bit of that later. So creating your own path is, again, when you're researching and gathering this information and collecting the data, there's going to be stuff that applies to you and some stuff you're not going to even vibrate or feel. That's the stuff you just put aside. You're not gonna access everything that you're gonna gravitate to. There's some stuff you're gonna read and study and like, I'm not feeling that. I don't need that. Your spirit is telling you don't need it. Doesn't mean you can't read it and educate yourself on it. But if you got to force yourself to accept something, that's the worst thing you can do. Then there's going to be other stuff you're going to intake and absorb, and your spirit's going to gravitate towards it. That's the stuff you need to master. You understand? And that's how you create your own path. When you're reading books, studying under elders and scholars, there's nothing wrong with that. But there gets a point in the journey where you have to let go of the hand. You have to finish the journey yourself. Okay, nobody's going to take you to some paradise, or there's not one individual, male or female, that has the answers to everything in the universe. You become a mental slave if you accept that reality. This is the problem why a lot of us over the years have gotten caught up in a lot of these organizations. And usually these organizations have a blueprint or a pattern. It's always one divine savior figure, and he's connected to some extraterrestrials or entities, or he communicates with beings from another galaxy, or he has a spiritual connection to it's all Yahweh. Ben Yahweh did this, Dr. York, Farrakhan. And it's not to knock them to say that they didn't do anything good. But what happens is when you fall up under the system and say, I believe that individual has the soul salvation to getting us to this. Really, it's religion, because really they're teaching you another form of religion. They're teaching you there's this heaven. They're teaching you that there's something coming for you. And I'm here to tell you, you might find it out the hard way. There's nothing coming for you. I hate to bust the bubble. You can believe that. You can believe it in your mind. This is one of the tricks that they've been perpetrating on us for hundreds of thousands of years. The Jesus story, the Savior story. It's to breed laziness. This is what it does. It breeds a mentality that, oh, if I fail and I'm miserable here and I'm not successful here, I have something bigger and greater waiting for me in the afterlife. That's a trick. Now, you got to raise yourself up to that reality. A lot of us like to believe those stories, and we left, again, we might have left European versions of Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. But when you look at the black Hebrew Israelites, it's no different. It's just maxed with Afrocentricity. That's it. But they still believe that Yahweh is going to crack the sky and wreak havoc on the planet. That's religion. That's not going to happen. What's happening is, and you're seeing it manifest for yourself, we are creating this energy ourselves. You understand? It's us doing it ourselves. And it's by how we're imposing our will. Now, we can blame it on some unseen force, good, bad, God, devil, which when you study the 7 principles of Tahuti, which I always recommend most people master, the 7 principles of Tahuti, especially when you deal with the doctrine of vibration, you're just going to see their varying degrees of energy. That's all it is. There's no such thing as good or bad. Good or bad is perception. It's what one perceives. Because if I say something or I see something, I might perceive it as what we term negative. She might look at it, that might not be negative to her. So when we dialogue and we communicate, we don't take into account that everybody on their spiritual path is evoluting at different paces. Some beyond others, some are behind. That's why some concepts, it's hard. Religious people are the hardest people to talk to because they don't go outside of person, place, or thing. They can't go outside of God, man, and devil. Once you go outside of that, they can't comprehend that. What do you mean there's no God sitting on the throne in heaven? I can't conceive that. Because the greatest travesty one can do to themselves is accept that there's something outside of themselves that exists that's controlling, I know it sounds good. You understand? It's just not reality. These were stories. When you read those biblical stories and you read a lot of the Egyptian stories, you're reading symbolicism of things that went on in nature, creation, and a lot of it is breaking down what goes inside of the womb of the female. That's what you're actually reading when you're reading about creation and things of that nature. So we got to get more familiar with the mystic meanings of these stories. Because let's give an example. When you're reading the Bible, do you really think Solomon slaughtered 58,000 bulls and calves and sliced his throat? What does that really mean when we're reading those stories? You understand? Because now I can take the flip note of it. You look at Christianity in this country, and where does the concept of monogamy come from? When the Bible doesn't teach anything about monogamy. Everybody in the Bible was a pimp. They had 5, 6 wives. They had harems. Solomon was the biggest pimp. And God didn't look at him any less. Solomon had concubines. We're not talking about multiple wives. You know what concubines are? That's just like you go somewhere, you got a harem of females at your disposal. You travel over here, you got another harem of females. The reason why you got to look at the symbolicism, the important aspect of that story is, especially when you're creating your spiritual path, if you petition for the knowledge of the wisdom, just like Solomon did, everything else comes to you. When you're trying to work spiritual magic for mundane shit like a nice car and money, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Because what tends to happen is, when you access greater black magic, remember this, and I told you this, we had this conversation before. When you're working with that, it brings about the change you need, not the change you want. So you might be petitioning the spirits and the ancestors for a new BMW, but they might see you got psychological problems they need to balance out in your subconscious mind. Or they might see you got individuals around you that you need to balance that out. And you're focusing on a BMW, but you have greater problems that need to be addressed. So these are your people that will come to you and they'll say, man, I've been working this ritual to do this, that's not working. That's because the spirits are trying to tell you that's not what you need right now. You understand? Because one works under the principle, if you petition, like right now I work with a lot of the dark energy. I'm working with Kali Ma right now in La Santa Muerte, which is the Holy Death. And death represents transition to a higher level of spiritual consciousness. When you ask to be engulfed in the wisdom and the knowledge of it, then you receive more of the blessings. And the mundane stuff, the physical stuff, is automatically given to you. So when you're solely focusing on physical stuff, you'll find it, and 90% of the time it goes away. Now, I just want to be clear, if anybody has...
Could you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Which part? The last thing I said?
Few sentences,
I was saying, when you focus on the mundane stuff and the physical stuff, these are most people, these are the ones that are not successful. They'll usually come to you and say, it's not working. I'm doing a lot of rituals with the ancestors. I'm not being blessed with that. So what I was saying was, if you petition, if you're working with, say you're working in the Yoruba pantheon with Shango or Obatala, All right, if you're working with Shango, for an example, say you need, Shango would be a good energy to access if you had obstacles in your path, because Shango is a warrior spirit along with Ogun that clear pathways or blockages. So one would basically, the representation you would say, Allegro is always propitated first if you're working that system. You want Allegro to open the path, and then you would bring the archetype energy of Shango and Ogun in to clear away the path. If you propitate it for that, rather than come to the point where you're accessing these deities for revenge, right? Now here's the other thing, you gotta be careful with this shit. This can be dangerous, and I've watched this backfire on people. You do have aspects, we talked about the Petrolejos and the Voodoo, which when you deal with the dark spirits, the dark energies, they're powerful. They bring an abundance of blessings. But I'm gonna tell you this, and I can tell you this from experience: don't fuck with those the wrong way.
Sorry.
Excuse my language. Don't mess with those the wrong way.
No problem.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
Everybody, that's okay.
Yeah.
But some of what you're saying is going over some of our heads
Correct.
Completely because Shanga don't even have a clue what that means.
Okay.
And coming to this class to find a pathway is like elementary. We know that there's bigger, there's better.
Correct.
So I need you to come and address it slightly like we don't know.
I got you.
anything.
Okay. No. That's fine. Now, I'm referring and I'm jumping around. And again, what I was about to say, this is question. If you have questions, raise your hands,
Okay.
because it's not just anytime. Just put your hand up. If you got a question, stop. Put your hand up. Do you have a question? Oh, you put it. Okay. All right. So when I was referring to Shango and Obatala, I'm jumping around the different spiritual systems. That would be the Yoruba of West Africa, the West African spiritual system. All right, those are the deities or the archetype energies that are representative in those systems. So Shango, he deals with justice, balancement. He's a warrior type energy. Obatala, for an example, would deal with knowledge and wisdom. Right, you'll find his colors are white. They call him Father of the White Cloth. It deals with purity, cleansing of the head. You have other female deities in there, such as Oshun, Yemaya, which they work with a lot of the feminine energy. They deal with the balancement of the masculine and feminine principles. And there's certain archetypes that they deal with specifically, like childbirth, childbearing, blessing of children. The best way to get familiar with that is, without like going through each one, because that could be a class in itself, is, I mean, you can Google this stuff and find information on it freely. If you just Google the Yoruba Pantheon, for an example, you'll get, there's even some books we have out there on it too, that we have on the table. We just got them covered right now because of the rain. To educate yourself on what these deities represent. Now the question though I would have to ask you, to get somebody kind of to that point, we'd have to establish, like, what is your background? Where are you at in your spirituality? Because that would explain maybe where the gap is, or maybe where the not understanding kind of comes in. Because that's going to vary. Like, if we went around the room, I'm sure everybody, like you say, some people might have, what I just said, like if I went to Yehuda, he knows that and beyond. So now maybe, so we have a better understanding. Like, where are you at right now in your journey? Like, that would be a good way to start.
In my awakening, they say, I just come out of an era of working under that diocese of Christianity.
Okay.
So I worked ministry, saw it from the inside out, saw